Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about Super Mario 64. But before I do, up front here, a few things to mention. As always, if you'd like to see a written review before, after, or instead of the video, you can go ahead and go to www.thegravelpit.net or click on the link in the description, and you can go to my written review for that. And another thing is that this kind of crept up on me. I was a little surprised I'd done this many reviews at this point, but I want to do something a little bit special, for the 50th Real Person Reviews episode. And also kind of want to say thanks to you guys for watching. I know I don't get tons of views on it, and I don't get really many comments at all on these videos, but I am getting views. It's not like I'm getting no views or anything. People are watching, so it's kind of nice just to at least have people who are willing to watch. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes comment. It's nice that I'm not just talking to a camera, and that my thoughts and stuff on these games. And this thing that I enjoy doing is going out to people who also hopefully at least somewhat enjoy watching and listening to it, and that's cool. So thank you guys. But I don't want to get too sappy or anything. I mean, fuck, it's just 50 videos. So maybe at 100 we'll have a full-on cry. But now we got all that shit out of the way. Let's just get to the fucking review. So Super Mario 64 is a 3D platformer for the Nintendo 64. It is, of course, part of the Mario series. And it's one of the earliest, not the first, but is one of the earliest 3D platformers, and generally considered one of the best and most important ones because of when it came out. It came out, of course, Nintendo 64. It was one of the first 3D systems to really push that, and also be successful in the process. So it's very important, and I'm sure that if you guys, you guys know me. You know that I love Nintendo 64, and if you guys have a Nintendo 64, chances are pretty good you played this game. But I'll still explain it, because I'm sure there are people who haven't played the game. So, it's kind of a basic thing, as most Mario games tend to be for the plot-wise. The simple thing is that Mario has been invited by Princess Peach to go to her castle and have cake with her. And that's pretty much the thing. And so Mario goes over there, only to find that once he gets in the castle, a voice comes over in, Bowser's voice, and apparently, it tells him to just get out and leave. And then the Toad tells him about it. Basically, Bowser has invaded Peach's castle, and has kidnapped Princess Peach, and then has imprisoned everyone inside the walls of the castle, which, believe me, that sounds much more badass than it really is. Because by that he means that he's hidden them within the worlds that are inside certain paintings within the castle. I guess the castle is just a gigantic art gallery. Whatever. Who cares? Fine. So basically, you go around the castle, which is a big, it's a hub world. It's a very glorified hub world. You go around, and there are certain paintings that you can jump into on the walls. And that's what takes you to these other worlds, or levels, whatever you want to call them. In each of the levels, there are I believe 7 stars for you to get in each world. There are 6 stars that are mission stars. So it can be a variety of things you have to do with their whole 3D platforming stuff, right? And then there's usually 1 star for getting 100 coins in the level. And every time you get a star, you'll be booted out of the level after you get it, except for the 100 coin star, which you can get that and then keep going and get one of the main stars. There's some similar missions on them. There's a few missions that are kind of similar to one another. A lot of them revolve around the idea of getting to a certain place, or maybe beating a boss. Collecting the 8 red coins is one that is in all of the worlds, which will have 8 red coins just scattered around, and you'll have to go find them and collect all of them and then get the star for it. And there's some neat stuff like that going on. So a lot of it is very much of the times with these 3D platformers of the time, where basically you're thrown into these worlds, and they're these big, open overworlds. You just kind of run around them and explore them and try to find things, you try to do things, and just kind of figure it out. These big kind of playgrounds for you to just go and have fun. And I think that's pretty neat. That's the point is that is the way it's designed. And the reason that you get booted out once you get a star is because certain stars that you select to get set up the stage slightly differently. So sometimes there'll be something present or something absent if you pick certain ones, and it's because it's designed around doing that specific star, which means like sometimes you can't get there are some stars you can't get while going for other ones, but sometimes you can get them while going for other ones because they're still accessible. So it's kind of all over the place with that. But just know that you're given a little hint when you go in which star you're going to be going for next. They give you a hint in the title. Sometimes it's sort of a hint, and other times it's almost flat out just telling you the star you're supposed to go get. But it's about actually going and doing it usually more than trying to figure it out. So don't be fooled. This is really an action game. It's not exactly a puzzle game. So it is very much focused on the 3D platforming action with a slight collectible element with trying to get those coins for the 100 coin star. And Mario has a bunch of abilities in this game. I mean, he's got tons of moves that he has right off the bat, and the game tries to kind of ease you into it and tell you how to do some of these moves as you go along through, reading signs or talking to certain characters. But you don't really have to. I mean, if you know the moves, you can just go. I mean, Mario can jump, and he can double jump, he can triple jump, and by double jump and triple jump, I don't mean that he can jump in mid-air. What I mean by that is he can jump, and then by hitting the jump button when you connect on the ground again, you can do a double jump, and then you can even do a triple jump in this manner if you have enough forward momentum. Then there's the ability to do a backflip, a side jump, a long jump. You can do ground pound. You can punch and kick, and you can dive at people, and you can swim, and you can jump on. Well, you can jump on enemies and such. I mean, you have a lot of abilities right off the bat. And you can wall jump as well too. There's a lot you can do just immediately, and that's really cool. That's just really cool because you can it's not like, hey, learn how to do everything. It's like here's everything, and learn how to use it. So then once you know how to use it, you just kind of go. And I mean that's kind of overwhelming, and it's not all necessarily super intuitive, but it's pretty good, and the game does tell you how to do it. And you use these different techniques to get to the certain stars and get them, and after you have certain amounts of stars, there are certain doors in the castle that are sealed off by the power of the stars, I guess. And once you have enough stars, you can then go through those doors. And you also have to fight Bowser throughout the whole quest, a total of 3 times. And the first 2 times you beat him, he will give you a key to access another part of the castle. So there's an upstairs, a downstairs, and there's all kinds of rooms to go into and levels to try out and all kinds of different stars. And in total there are 120 stars. But in order to beat the game you only need 70 of them. So, I mean, 70 doesn't, that might sound like a lot. But granted how some of them, aren't even necessarily that difficult to get. And depending on how good you are at the game, it can be pretty fast. And after you fight Bowser for the 3rd time, of course, you beat him, and then you save the princess, you win the game. It's not really spoilers, it's just something that naturally is going to happen the way it's set up, and I guess all I've really spoiled is that, yes, this Mario game does not have a crazy plot twist. And all this stuff works together pretty well. I mean, if you like the genre, and especially if you have a Nintendo 64, I mean, it makes total sense that you would have this, right? And I like a lot of stuff about this. I mean, like, I think the music is very catchy. They reused the same themes a few times, so maybe there could have been more themes. But I think the ones that are in there are pretty catchy and good. And I also think the visuals are very appealing. They're very bright and colorful. They're very vibrant. It's never really confusing as to what you're looking at for things. So I think that's actually really nice, and they do use the use of some sprites in there too, so if they want something to look a little more detailed than they could do with, the polygons, they usually use sprites, and I think they use it pretty well throughout the game. And there's a good difficulty curve, because in the beginning the stars aren't too difficult to get, and then as you go along they do get, increasingly difficult. And I guess something I should also mention is that as far as your abilities, there are 3 abilities, I guess power-ups, basically, that you can get throughout the game. You have to find their specific levels where you pound on, like, the switches, and, like, the thing is, they give you the ability of the cap right away. They're all caps, and they give you a limited power-up, similar to, like, how you get, like, a star, and that's, like, a limited power-up. There's a similar kind of concept. As the star from, like, the other older Super Mario Bros. Games. And you go into these little levels, and I think it's cool that you go into levels where you get to kind of get a demo of, like, oh, this is what this hat does, and this ability that I'm working towards. And you get through the level, and then you can push the cap switch, and then you'll get that block. Basically, like Super Mario World, it'll unlock those blocks, and then in other levels where you've seen, a weird, like, square or a weird cube you can't, like, do anything with, it's because you don't have the cap yet. But once you hit the switch, they'll show up, and then, oh, hey, now I can use this cap, and usually you have to use that to get, 1 or 2 of that world's stars. There is the vanish cap, which allows you to go partially invisible and walk through certain walls and enemies. There is the metal cap, which makes you invincible and lets you, kill enemies and walk through fire and stuff, and also makes you heavy so you can sink underwater. And then there is the wing cap, which allows you to fly in the sky and do swoops, somewhat similar to the cape from Super Mario World, except, you can't hit anybody with it or anything, so there's that. And all these work for a limited amount of time, so you'll have to go back and get another one from that same spot if you use it up. And I don't know, like, they're a neat little addition to the game as well. I think those are neat. But those are, like, the extent of your power-ups. Otherwise, you run on a life meter rather than, getting hit and you're shrunk or anything and getting mushrooms. Because the only mushrooms you get are the ones that give you extra lives. Which, of course, lets you, keep playing the game. And trying levels over and over again. Yeah, I mean, that's most of it. I think I've hit all the main mechanics of the game. And I think what's really cool is that because you have all these abilities when you start off too, like all the jumps and everything, is that you can do a lot of, like, cool sequence breaking, because there are a lot of points where it's like they want you to go a certain way in this level. Like, you're supposed to go this very obvious route to get to where you're supposed to be, but there are a lot of places where, because you have all these different abilities for, like, the jumps, jumps and the flips and the wall jumps and all that you're able to, like, get from point A to point B without going to, all these other points here, and you just, like, jump over to them. And I always thought that was really, like, fun. And it's cool because you can continually find new ways, especially if you're comfortable with the way Mario controls. You're able to go and do all these little shortcuts and save yourself some time and some headache. Sometimes it's easier, or sometimes it's just, it's more difficult, but it's a lot faster. And I do think that these were put here kind of on purpose. I mean, some might have been a bit of an accident, but I can't believe that there would be that much stuff that they just didn't assume people were going to try to do. And I think that's part of what makes it really, really fun and satisfying, is when you understand how to use Mario to get to these things without having to go the standard, expected way. I think it's just, that adds a lot to the game, and especially for someone who has played it over the years a lot. It's always fun to keep finding, like, new ways to do that stuff and save yourself some time, or just, do stuff out of sequence, because it's fun, and it feels awesome to do that. And the game really isn't too hard. I mean, the difficulty does ramp up, but it never gets to a point where, look, if I could beat this as a kid 100%, you guys can beat this. It's not really that difficult. You just have to get used to it is all. I really don't think it's that difficult. And, of course, I'm a little biased. I mean, I've played it 4 million times, but I still don't think it's not one of the hardest games out there, okay? It's a game that you're probably going to be able to actually beat, especially if you're somewhat decent at video games. So, keep that in mind. But I do have to kind of get to the downsides of the game, and there are some that I don't really agree with. One that I hear a lot of people say that I don't really agree with is that it hasn't aged well in terms of how it looks, and that's kind of dumb. I mean, like, if you think that, that's fine, I guess, but I don't agree, because, I mean, yes, there's polygons and there are pixels, but I have an imagination, and I don't think they look bad. I don't think it looks like they were trying to go for a really realistic thing that just looks ugly and stupid now. Everything is very, you know, bright, and it's very sharp, and it's clear what things are supposed to be. I'm never really confused what something is in the game. Or like, you know, like I'm never playing it, I'm like, what is this thing, or this looks hideous. It's just that, you know, like, yeah, it's a little blocky, I'll give you that. Okay? It doesn't look like Super Mario Galaxy, okay? I'll give you that. But I don't think it looks bad just because it looks different than, you know, something today. That's kind of ridiculous. But again, opinions. If you think it looks bad, you think it looks bad, and I can't really argue with that. I just don't think it looks that objectively bad. There's no, like, super blurry textures that look dumb, or people that are supposed to look realistic, and they're clearly just, like, fuzzy textures over, you know, slightly human-looking polygons. It's a fucking cartoon, and it looks like a fucking cartoon works. And that's just me, anyway. Over defensive about it, I'm sorry. The other thing is the controls, and these, I get it, and I sort of agree, but not really. The controls are a little more stiff, and they're a little more momentum-based. And if I wanted to make a comparison, I would say that the controls of Super Mario 64 are to the controls of, let's say, Super Mario Sunshine, much in the way that the controls of Super Mario Bros. Are to Super Mario Bros. 3. You know, the controls of Super Mario Bros. 3 are really freaking tight, okay? They're super tight. But you know, going back and play, I don't know, and you go back and play the first Super Mario Bros., and it's like, those clearly are not as tight. You have to build up your momentum. But the thing is, you're still building up your momentum. It still makes sense, and they're still good. It's just that they're different. And I think that's the same with Super Mario 64. A lot of it is based on momentum. You can't just start going in a direction and just 0 to 100 and just start going. Which in Super Mario Sunshine, you kind of can. So it's a lot of it where, like, I think it's kind of like a patience issue, and I know sometimes it can be finicky. Definitely, there are times when you think you're going to land on a platform, you're like, oh, I'm going to get here, and, like, he kind of doesn't. Hey, Mario will grab on, and he just doesn't grab on and stuff. There are some times that feel like that, and I think it's because it's a little deeper than it lets on, and so it's like, you know, it's not as easy. It's just like, okay, I'm going to jump up here and I'll grab. It's like, no, I guess I wasn't quite high enough, so he didn't grab, so I fell back down, and, you know, you have to kind of work with it. But the one thing that I think is kind of bad that I've noticed is it seems a little inconsistent on turning around, basically. That's usually the one I have the most trouble with. Where sometimes you hit the opposite direction you're facing, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to turn around, and, like, sometimes you'll immediately be facing the other direction, which makes sense and feels good as far as a video game goes. But sometimes he'll just walk around. It means he kind of walks forward a little bit and takes a turn and turns around that way, you know, like you would in real life, which, again, it makes sense in real life, but it doesn't really work that well for a video game. And the real problem is that it's just inconsistent, or I don't really understand the conditions of when he'll turn around immediately and when he'll walk around. So that can be annoying. And especially if you're on a small, you know, near a ledge or on a small thing, and, like, yo, you walked off, I guess. Like, that's annoying. Or, like, I guess the other thing is, like, when you're sliding down something, you can, you know, it depends. Like, sometimes when you're running, I guess, is a thing, too. It's, like, momentum-based. Like, if you're moving forward fast enough, and then, like, you hit, B, or, like, jump and hit B, you'll do, like, a dive thing. Like, you'll do, like, lunge your whole body forward. And if you just hit B without enough momentum, you just punch, or if you're in the air, you'll do, like, a kick. And sometimes it's hard to judge if you have enough momentum to do that. And sometimes you'll try to do it and won't have enough momentum, or you're trying to just do the regular one, and you have too much momentum, and I don't know. Like, that's a thing, too. But I think that maybe that could be, you know, at least I understand it. At least, you know, you can kind of, like, work around it. Okay, I'm gonna specifically be trying to be moving when I do it, or specifically be more still when doing it to keep away from the gray area. Whereas, like, the turning around thing, I still don't really understand. As far as actual complaints, though, that I have totally, one, it's not a huge complaint, but it's just, making the coin sprites is a little awkward, because it's sometimes hard to come in contact with them. Sometimes it's difficult to, you know, you think you're going to grab a coin, but you don't. Having the drop shadows helps because you can watch where the drop shadows are and think, oh, I grabbed it. But just looking at the coins themselves, they're like spinning like two-dimensional sprites. So like you're just trying to grab them, and like sometimes you'll just totally miss them because your angle is off, and it's mostly because of, you know, the angle your camera was versus where you're moving, and like the sprites are slightly like, it's hard. It's the point is, it's hard for a three-dimensional character to try and get a two-dimensional sprite. It's harder than you might think. Not a huge deal, but it can be kind of annoying, and until you adjust to that as well, that's going to be like, it doesn't really make as much sense all the time, like, how did I miss? Also the pop-in with that, where it's like, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm like over here, I don't see any coins over in this direction, until you run, until you run up to them, you're like, oh shit, here's fucking coins. Now that I'm close enough, I guess they now exist, because they have to load up and like pop in like that, whatever. Again, not a huge deal, but the one thing that is a huge deal that I'll totally agree with 100% is this camera fucking sucks. This camera is a piece of shit. It's always running into walls, and it doesn't want to like move. You know, it's like, it just makes a stupid noise, like I can't move that far anymore. So sometimes what would be a simple swing of the camera around, and, you know, an intuitive camera would kind of push itself in naturally so you're not trying to go through the wall. This camera doesn't really know how to do that, and they're like, I don't know, we'll have to swing in the other way, or you'll have to bring the camera in a bit and then try to turn it. So you have to turn the camera way more than necessary sometimes, and the camera likes to move in a set amount when you hit the button to turn it, so it's like, you want to get like a specific angle, but it keeps moving too much to the left or to the right when you hit the buttons to move it around, and that's fucking frustrating to fight with that, and it's always trying to center itself behind you, usually, so then like sometimes you're like, you have it in a good place, and you start moving, and then it just moves itself on you, or you're trying to run across like a thing straight, like, oh, there's a little bridge, I should be careful when I'm running across it. All of a sudden the camera decides, hey, we're just going to do this really cool panning thing. We're just going to turn all the way around you, so, you know, you're never fucking running straight anymore. Like, I don't know, like, the camera is a piece of shit. You can also do this fixed camera mode, where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to, like, you can hit the button, and it's like, there's two different ways you can set it. One way you can set it is that when you hold R, the camera stays behind Mario really closely, which is supposed to be like, you know, okay, you want the camera behind him so you can see what you're doing, and, like, it stays behind you in a crucial moment. I get that. The problem is that it's like way up on your fucking ass, so you're taking up most of the screen, you can't really see what's in front of you. So if there are any actual obstacles in front of you, that camera view is not really actually going to help you at all. The other one is you can set it so that it's a fixed camera, so that it just stays in a position, which I guess could be good, but then also is kind of confusing because sometimes you can just run away and like you're just nowhere near that camera anymore, and it doesn't move until you let go of the button again. And sometimes it's too far away to really see what you're doing at that point anyway, so it's only good for like a few seconds before you have to like let go and have the camera readjust itself again. The camera in this game is just a nightmare, and I know it's kind of shitty on the Nintendo 64 in general, but the camera in this game especially, I feel like, because it's one of the first of them and it's trying to, you know, there's a C button stand for camera, it's the idea they've tried to really push it across, like, hey, we're moving a camera around you so people would understand it. It's clearly like a victim of its newness, but that doesn't mean that it's an excuse. It's still bad. It's still frustrating as shit. And while it's you know, it's one where like it doesn't keep me from finishing the game, but there are points in the game when it's really frustrating, and it makes things much more difficult than they would be with, you know, a decent camera. I also think the mechanics of the wing cap kind of suck because it's just awkward to do the momentum and do the swooping, and it's just, it feels so hard, especially when you're trying to collect things in the air. It's already hard to collect those sprites in the air, like it's collecting 2D sprites and putting them in the air, then making it so you have to, you know, fly around with a wonky wing cap. Ugh. And speaking of the caps in general, it's just kind of like, I don't hate them or anything. I think they're neat, but I feel like they're very gimmicky. I don't feel like they really implemented them too well into like the levels. Most of the caps are only used in a few of the levels, so I feel like they either could have just not included them or done more with them. And they do feel like a thing. It's like, because they're so limited as well, it's just like, well, I get this for, you know, a few seconds. Like, I wear the hat for like maybe half a minute or something, and then it's like, well, back to being regular Mario, I guess. Like, that was just very fleeting. I don't know. That stuff can be kind of annoying, and I think they could have done a better job with those. And I guess one other thing is that the Bowser fights are underwhelming. You know, it's basically the same fight 3 times. and the mechanic of swinging him around, and you're supposed to swing around, like, throw him into bombs on the side, and, you know, the last fight should have been something different at least, where it was, I guess it was more difficult because you had to do it more than once, but, you know, like, they could have done something different and more unique with these other boss fights with Bowser, and they didn't, and, it's just, it's like swing him around and try to throw him at the bomb, and it sucks because like you swing around, it starts getting faster and faster, and then it's like, you know, when you let go of the button, or like when you hit the button again to throw him, or whatever, you know, when you go to throw him, like it doesn't, like, it almost goes too instantly. You know, it's like, okay, well, like, he'll let go and, like, a little bit, because if you're spinning that fast, you'd think, like, okay, I have to predict it a bit, so that by the time he lets go, it'll kind of make Bowser go over into, like, the bomb, but no, it goes, like, immediately from where you let go of him, so it's like, well, I don't know, I felt like that was not very well polished either, and it was hard to hit the bombs, and I don't know, and they were lazy with those Bowser fights because they weren't really that difficult, or the parts that were difficult, it was hard for the wrong reason. They weren't challenging, they were just hard because of weird controls that aren't very good. So I don't know, I guess there are things wrong with the game totally. I'm not gonna pretend like this is a totally perfect masterpiece, but yeah, it has some issues, just not necessarily the ones that everyone says. Those aren't necessarily the same issues as mine, I guess. Well, I ended up talking about this longer than I thought I would. Sorry about that. Just kind of wanted to get into explaining some of the stuff and why I like this game so much and why I don't like it. Overall, I love this game, and I guess I've always kind of had this problem where this was like the first 3D platformer I played, and one of the first few games that I played, aside from a few NES games and the one or two Atari 2600 games. This was like this and like Pokemon Yellow, I believe, were some of the first games I can remember playing, and you know, I guess this kind of set the standard for 3D platformers for me, which has probably been the problem, where it's like, if it's like as good as Super Mario 64, like this is average, this is the standard, and I was like, anything worse than this is bad, anything better than this is awesome. And, you know, that's not a bad way to look at it, but this game is pretty fun, and I do like it, and honestly, like, it's not that difficult. I mean, again, if I can beat this as a fucking kid who sucks at video games and still sucks now, I think anybody else could beat this if they gave it an honest shot. I will say, though, if you're looking at this and thinking, like, maybe I can get all 120 stars, what do I get for that? Don't, because, and I probably should have included this in the complaints, but whatever, you're at the end part now, so if you don't want the spoiler, you just leave. I've told you enough. But this spoiler, if you get all 120 stars, and then of course it goes to the end, you have to actually restart the fucking game before you can actually find out that it did something. You start your file back up again, you're outside the castle, and you'll notice that the cannon outside the castle is now open. So you jump in the cannon, you shoot yourself on top of the castle, and holy shit, Yoshi's hanging out up here. You talk to Yoshi, this is his first appearance in the whole fucking game. You talk to Yoshi, and he's like, hey, it's Mario, hey, whatever, here you go. It's like, this isn't the end of the game. We want you to keep on playing, so here's a special treat just for you. And they fill up your extra lives to 100. Yay! They also give you this cool, you know, triple jump, where, like, now when you do a triple jump and you hold the button down for your third jump, you'll go spinning around, and it's all sparkly and doing a bunch of flips, and it's kind of cool, I guess, because it's like, you won't take any fall damage when you do that kind of triple jump, which, that's pretty helpful. And then, I mean, it sucks that you can't do wall jumps with it. I don't know why that is. Maybe I just timed it wrong, but it seems like I can't do wall jumps when I have that on. But, you know, that'll be helpful, you know, being able to survive those really long falls, and having those 100 lives now, boy, that'll be super helpful in doing fucking nothing because I have all 120 stars. What were they thinking? Why is this a good reward? There's nothing left to do but to go back and try to get the same stars again, which isn't even as satisfying because not even gold stars anymore. And what, try to improve my fucking coin totals like I give a shit? Like anybody gives a shit about those? They don't. And you out there, if you do, don't even leave a comment because you don't. Because that kind of person doesn't exist. So, that's dumb. But hey, we want to say good things. We want to leave this on a good note because this is a good game. It's a classic. If you have a Nintendo 64, get this game. It's worth the 20 to 30 bucks you're probably going to have to pay for it. Maybe 40. I don't know. Last I saw it, I think it was hovering around 30 to 40. So, whatever. It's one of those games that it's worth it. If you have a Nintendo 64, and I mean you probably have this game already, but if you don't, you should, because it's definitely one of those must-have games. It's very awesome. It's also very important. Everybody knows it's historically important. You gotta have it. And for asking for stuff in the comments, what did you guys think of Super Mario 64? What was your favorite Mario game? Mine's maybe Super Mario World, but my favorite 3D Mario game is Super Mario Galaxy. Boy, wouldn't it be cool if this had some multiplayer? That's another thing they probably could have done. It would be nice to have a multiplayer thing on the system where they're trying to push that, hey, we have 4 controllers now. But no, did they even do 2-player? Did you see Luigi at all in this fucking thing? I didn't. But no, we're leaving on a good note. We're doing a good note. So for a good note, how about maybe just leaving, like, what was your favorite level in Super Mario 64? And it's kind of a tough call for me, because there's some levels that are fun and all this. Clock levels is really cool. I think it's really interesting and, like, inventive. It's kind of tough also. So that's a close second, but I think I'm going to have to go with the tower. Thwomp's Tower? Thwomp's Tower, or is it Thwomp's Fortress? I always forget. But that level, the second level in that one. I think I like that one the most. Although I really like the Dire Dire Docks theme. But yeah, that level is just cool. And it's pretty easy, it's fun, and it's one where, like, because it's near the beginning of the game, I've played the level a lot, even if I didn't necessarily finish the game the other times I played. So I don't know, yeah, just what's your favorite level? Leave it in the comments. Leave all that stuff in the comments. And if you played this game as a kid, like I did and grew up with it, when you play that game again now and you beat it and you hear that credit music, I mean, you're gonna tear up, because if you don't, you either didn't grow up with this game, or you're a soulless robot. And let's go!